Alright, I want to talk about section 10.6, surface area of cylinders. So, just like with the other shapes that we've been looking at, we're going to take a look at the cylinder, which, if you recall, looks like this. And it's in a three-dimensional shape, and it has a circle on top, circle on the bottom, and they there's kind of a space in between them. They kind of have these two, kind of extends them up through space. And what I really want to do this time is I want to find that surface area of covering the edges and as well as the bottom as well. So just like I've been doing, I'm going to kind of slice this open like we did with our frog dissection, lay it out flat, and turn this into a net. Now the net of a cylinder looks like this. And you can see that if I just folded these up and into space, excuse me, I would be able to then roll the big flat part so that I could turn it into a cylinder like it was before. But what I really need to do is I need to find the surface area of what is actually happening and how it's looking. Okay, so let's look at some measurements that we can get for this and what we need. First of all, we need the height of our cylinder, because I need to know the distance from here to here. Now I also need to know the radius of the circle at the edge. So I need to know the distance from here to here. Because remember, the radius is from the center to the outer edge. And with those two measurements, that's all that I need to get my surface area. Watch. So say in this example, let's see, we have the radius is equal to 4 centimeters. And our height is going to be 8 centimeters. Well, if I'm going to add up each piece, that's really easy for me to do. I know the area of a circle. The area of a circle is pi r squared. Substituting in what I know here, I can write that pi times 4 squared. So I can see that this is 16 pi centimeters squared for the area right here. Now, there's two of these, so I will have two of them. So I'm going to do my circle 1 plus circle 2 plus my rectangle to get my area total. And that's going to be what I'm going to be looking at to add up all the sides. So my circle 1 is 16 pi. My circle 2 is going to be exactly the same thing because it has the same measurements. 16 pi. And my rectangle, which is a little bit different and a little bit kind of interesting, because this part here is clearly 8 centimeters, but my question is, what is the measurement of this side? Well, if you recall, if I rolled this cylinder up around the bottom here is actually going to be perfectly with the length of the outer circle. So the length at the bottom is going to be my circumference of my circle. And if you recall, circumference is equal to 2r times pi. So my length for this section is going to also use r in it. So that's why I only need my height. My circumference in this case is going to be 2 times 4, because I'm using the 4 from my circle, times pi. So my distance here is going to be 8 pi. That's the length of the cylinder that I'm working with, which is kind of cool. Now, I'm going to add that back into my whole grouping. I have 8, oh sorry, I didn't actually solve it, is 8 pi. I'm going to put my 8 pi back in here for my total area of my triangle, or my area of my total area, sorry. So now I have 16 pi plus 16 pi plus 8 pi. Now these are all like terms because they're all multiplied by pi, which is pretty convenient. So this is really just 32 pi plus 8. I have 40 pi equals my area of my total. If I wanted to turn that into a number using pi as an actual number or an approximate number, that would be 40 times 3.14, and that would get me 125.6, 125.6 centimeters squared. And this would also be centimeters squared. I forgot to add that. And those would be our two answers. Okay, let's come up with a formula for this because I don't want to have to do that every time we do a surface area of a cylinder. Our formula is going to look kind of like this. My area of a cylinder is going to be, notice that I added my two circles up. So my two circles is going to be, I could say circle 1 would be pi r squared plus pi r squared plus my rectangle. My formula for my rectangle in this case is going to be the circumference times the length. So my circumference is 2r pi times the actual length of the side times length, or height in this case, depending on what it is. It can be any dimension that we want. I can probably call this h. It might be a little bit better. Now if I do a little bit of simplifying, pi r squared plus pi r squared is 2 pi r squared, because it's just 2 times the same thing. And I can rewrite this a little bit easier, and I can just write this as 2r times h times pi. And as long as I remember that h is whatever that distance between my two triangles is, I'm going to be just fine. Okay, let's real quick test out our formula with the cylinder that we did, just to make sure that we got it right. So I'm going to plug in what I know. 2 pi times r squared plus 2 times r times the height times pi. Right? That's everything put in from the cylinder that I had before. This should be 2 pi times 16 plus 8. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 8 is 64. I'm wondering if I missed something. I did miss something from earlier. Whoops. I made a big mistake in that this section here I wrote 8 pi. 8 pi is only the circumference. This should have instead been 8 pi times 8, because 8 was my height. I never actually multiplied it by my height here, so that would not have worked. So this should have instead been, if I were to rewrite this line below, I would write 16 pi plus 16 pi plus 8 pi times 8 equals my area of my total. So instead this would be 16 pi plus 16 pi plus 64 pi. And this is going to get us much closer to that. Well, it's going to get us the right answer. This is 86 pi. And that's going to be the answer that we got, which is likely what we'll get in the bottom part, because I was noticing that it didn't quite work out. That's why it's easier when you use the formula, because you don't make mistakes like I just did. So 8 times 8 is 64 pi. Now 2 times 16 is 32 pi plus 64 pi, which will give us 96 pi. I'm guessing, yep, I did my math wrong here. This is not 86 pi. Wow, I made a whole bunch of errors today. I'm so sorry. It's been a while. You know, I had some due. 16 plus 16 is 32, and 32 and 64 is 96, not 86. Remember, we learn from our mistakes as well as our even more than when we get things right. But the big key here that we're going to be using is this formula. This is going to be the area of a cylinder. And I hope that you do not make as many mistakes as I did. Good luck.